Today, we're going to talk about an exclusive Halloween experience you used to be able to purchase at Scarowinds Halloween Haunt. We're going to unlock the mysteries of skeleton keys on Haunt Culture.
Today is quite special, Leroy, as I'm running the show today, folks. With Leroy's help, of course. But we also have a very wonderful, special, awesome guest. Miss Anita is here with us today to talk with us about her experience and her knowledge on the Scarowinds skeleton keys. Anita, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hello, I am Anita Hart. Insert your own joke here. I was the London Terror skeleton key for 2016. That was actually my first year in Scarowinds.
Wow.
Kind of different to hop right into that.
Oh yeah.
It was a wonderful year. It really was.
Beautiful.
It kicked off a 4-year career with the park for me.
So Anita has a really cool, unique experience with the skeleton keys. Because prior to this, you had to have at least worked at the park for a singular year before you could even audition to be a part of the skeleton keys. Kind of similar to our Scare Force episode. We talked about it a little bit in that episode. Leroy will link that down in the description. First, what is a skeleton key, Anita?
So skeleton key was started by Scarowinds umbrella company, Cedar Fair, back in 2014. I believe the first one was at Knott's Berry Farm. Am I correct?
Knott's Berry Farm was the first one.
It is, or it was, an interactive experience. You purchased a fast pass, which also got you to the front of lines, and in addition, there were 6 to 10 extra interactive rooms throughout the park. So it was an interactive experience that you could purchase on top of a regular ticket.
Yep.
And you were in the story. You were in the witch's lair with Hansel and Gretel. You were in Whitechapel having to follow Jack the Ripper. So it was a little 5 to 7 minute long adventure.
Yeah, think of it like a little mini, I don't want to necessarily call it an escape room because you weren't trying to, some of them you were trying to escape, but it was more of an interactive, solve the mystery, here's a little blurb, because you got the privilege of jumping the lines at the mazes. So Cedar Fair was like, how can we make this more bang for their buck? More bang for our customers' buck. So they introduced the skeleton keys in 2014. And when you purchased a Fright Lane, you got a skeleton key to keep, a little souvenir. I still have mine from when I participated in skeleton keys. Anita still has hers. And I have seen several guests walk through the park with little skeleton keys too, which I think is pretty cool. Our experience is a little abbreviated. My first year was 2015. Anita's was 2016. And skeleton keys at Scarowinds began in 2014. So we're going to call 2014 the dark year because we don't know anything about it. Leroy, do you happen to know anything about skeleton keys from 2014?
Well, I do know one specifically was in the Scary Tales area. That was because my good friend Kayla, who I used to be Jack and Blair Barlow with, she was the witch, and there was a Hansel, and they had this little room. They had this really realistic gut that people could go in to grab stuff.
I remember hearing about that.
Yeah, that was pretty wild.
We're going to kick it off starting with 2015, talking about 2015 skeleton keys. And excuse me as I reference the notes and the articles on my phone. Shout out to Coaster 101 because I'm using their article to get a lot of information because it was a long time ago. 2014, they started the skeleton keys. They were really awesome. There was a different audition process, very similar to the Scareforce audition, you kind of auditioned for both, which I did not realize. So, in my experience, I started doing Skeleton Keys in 2016, the same year that Anita started. When I went in for my audition, I thought I was only auditioning for Scareforce, and then they called me and they were like, "You're going to be in this Skeleton Key," and I was like, "What is that?" I did not realize that it was the same audition, which I should have, because they handed you a script and they said, "Hey, read this script," and it was ironically the Pooh Girl script, and you read it, and they made you read it, they made you audition with it, and then they decided you go fit in with the Skeleton Keys or you go in and you fit with the Scareforce team. 2015, I was a brand new monster. I didn't know too much about anything. Really, the only thing I knew was that there was a very flamboyant man who walked around in a diaper. And I was like, why is this man in a diaper? That was one of our Skeleton Keys. That was in the playground area. I'm sure you've heard me talk about it before. Their Skeleton Key was centered around Pooh Boy, eventually Pooh Girl, who was locked out of his parents' house and made his own home in this shed. And the story changed throughout the years, but really the overall premise of the playground Skeleton Key was always a disgusting child, and poop was somehow incorporated into it. We have another Skeleton Key, was our Mass Acres. That's where all of our ghosties and our spirits resided. Through the 4 years that Skeleton Keys were present at Scarowinds, the story was the same. It was a seance. You came into a fortune teller. There was a magical globe that they would talk to. They used a baby monitor. Somebody was telling me about the baby monitor the other day. I think Tanya was telling me about the baby monitor and how they used a baby monitor to get the scares. Leroy mentioned Scary Tales. That was another popular one. It started out as the Hansel and Gretel scavenger hunt. It was more of a game of hot and cold. The witch had hidden a key for you to escape her hut. And the key, like Leroy said, was hidden within the very realistic stomach of Hansel. So the guests had to reach in and pull the key out of Hansel's stomach to be able to escape from the witch. That was the story for 2014 and 2015. And then 2016, the story transferred over into the Riddle Master,
who was not Pinocchio.
He was not Pinocchio, but for whatever reason, they gave him a very long nose. Our good friend Philip was the Riddle Master in 2016. And he had a very long, pointy nose that people called him Pinocchio. The Riddle Master basically trapped you in his hut and told you riddles, and you had to answer the riddles to get out. And then your final challenge was to pick from one of the 3 chalices. One of them had the thing where you make cold spaghetti and it feels like brains. Like you have to dig around in there to get a key. One of them was one of those slidey boxes where a roach popped out at you and he was like, "Haha, gotcha, now get out of my house." And then the third one, crowd favorite, you had to eat a bean-boozled jelly bean. And depending...
In 2016, it was dried bugs.
Was it dried bugs?
It was dried bugs.
So that's where the discrepancy is.
I remember that.
Yeah, they had mealworms, one other, maybe night crawlers, and full-on freeze-dried cockroaches.
Yes.
And people would pop one. You'd always have that one in a group. It's like, those aren't real. Crunch.
Oh. Yes. Yep. I do remember, now that you say that, I do remember Philip talking about the dried bugs.
Because at the end of the season, the cockroaches were all that was left. Like the itty-bitty mealworms were
gone.
And it
was that's the easiest
just the
thing
cockroaches. Yeah.
Just the cockroaches.
They had to choose one of the 3 challenges to get out, and one of them was the dried bugs. That eventually did switch over into the Bean Boozled the year that I was in there.
Yeah, because I got moldy cheese from you.
Yes.
And you're like, here's this one. It's either
it's toothpaste or blue raspberry.
It's okay. But either one's going to be better.
You'll be okay.
It was toothpaste, but it helps.
It helps. Another Skeleton Key was our Bloodyard. Bloodyard is timeless. Bloodyard has been around forever in different variations. But the Bloodyard story was the same exact all 4 years as far as I'm concerned. It was a capture the vampire, escape from the vampire type thing.
A mechanic has captured one of these vampires that lives in the Bloodyard and is showing you less than ethical experiments going on said bloodsuckers. And that was the one... They got my sister the worst. When the flashlights turned off.
Yes.
Just heard click, 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 click.
Yep. Yeah, that one had, I think that one and the London one had the most and the Mass Acres one had a lot of technology.
Yeah, we will get into technology with the London in
Yes.
2016.
They electrocuted the vampire, and then I think at one point the vampire had escaped. Like it gets out, and that's how
chases you out.
They chased you out of the skeleton key. Was the mechanic was experimenting on him. They go to electrocute him. Something goes wrong. He ends up breaking out, and he scares you right out of the skeleton key. Then we have London Terror. I believe 2014 and 2015
Jack the Ripper.
Was Jack the Ripper centered. It was about escaping Jack the Ripper. He had like trapped you in there, and you had to very similar to the other ones.
Drink a shot of like Jello blood or something.
Yep, you had to drink some Jello blood, and then you had to do all of his little tasks to be able to safely escape from Jack the Ripper's clutches, which is not historically accurate.
Which made my job a little bit funnier the next year from people who had been there before, because beforehand it was a 2-person skeleton key.
Yes.
When they changed it for 2016, it became a 1-person. So I could tell people who had been to this particular key before, because they were watching all the corners. They're like, he's going to pop out. When is he coming?
Yeah. What was the story? Because I don't know a lot about the London Terror story from when you did it. So what was kind of the story behind the London Terror skeleton key in your years that you were there?
So the year that I was there, I was inspector on Scotland Yard, and the guests were a class of trainees. They were on like their final exam, and they were getting in the field experience. So there'd been a murder in this pub where we all were. And I got real worried, because all like my chalk outlined the bloody handprints. Nothing was there until opening night.
Oh goodness!
Not even then. They had to draw a picture. I didn't have any notebooks.
Wow.
I will say, after dry run, after I did like the faking it in dry run, every single operations manager brought me a notebook that night. So shout out to all of y'all.
Aww.
Starting out, there's been a murder in the Crown and Crow pub.
Crown and Crow pub.
Yes, one Marie Chapman.
Ooh.
I can do it now. We're going to start.
I was gonna say, here is the skeleton key.
Yes. Welcome, cadets. Congratulations on making it this far in your training. Tonight, as part of your final exam, you are being given first-hand access to a fresh crime scene. We can do this now. I got the hat.
I love it.
I did this 13 times an hour, 6 hours a night.
Yes.
Oh.
Yep, I can go through the whole Pooh Girl spiel.
But as they're in here, stuff starts going wrong. And as you mentioned, some of the skeleton keys, I know yours, you didn't have a lot of effects, so it's down to you. You did a lot of improv, and you like.
It's a lot of like props and lots of touching things.
And I will say, y'all played and got my brother-in-law the best. I didn't know how bad until a year after, when he like turned white and started shaking. It was that girl wrecked him. It was beautiful. Yes, so London had a lot of technical effects, and things were very, very timed, because this ghost starts appearing. So I had 3 different effects.
Wow.
Which I was in charge of setting off, and it's because it's a crime scene. You had some spaces where you could play around, and as you know, you've got half a second to analyze your group and see what jokes am I going to use, what's the pattern, does this skew old, young, male, female, is this a family? Is somebody holding a basketball that they're going to fling at me if they get scared?
Yep.
And so you watch for your own personal safety as well.
Absolutely.
But it was very technical, and you had to have that timing right, especially because like, I want to set off an effect over here, and by the time it goes off, I want to be across the room. So like, I couldn't have done that.
Yeah, it wasn't me.
It wasn't me. I went home. I had a switch here, because at the end of it they get a backwards message. They have to draw a bloody handprint, and then they had a backwards message they had to read, and there's cups falling off.
Ooh.
Like, we broke 3 pewter cups just because they hit the ground so often. But at the end there's a jump scare mirror.
Yes, I remember the mirror.
And shout out to Jim and Trish for keeping that mirror working all season long.
Yes.
Wow.
But there was a little switch. I had an L-shaped bar, and there's like a light switch. And So at the end of it, I would have my hands up here, and I would hit that with my hip. It's like, I'm not doing anything. You can see my...
Yeah.
Now I have bruises, because I have 3 layers of skirts.
Yep.
But worth it. Worth every minute of it.
Yeah, London, I do remember a lot of the technical elements, and it was very cool because people would wait outside of my skeleton key and be like, oh, I just came from London. Like, oh my gosh, that was so technical. And I'm like, there's no tech in here. Sorry, your experience
It's just talent in here.
It's just talent. It's just personal.
You mentioned auditioning.
Yes.
And reading for it. So fun fact, every single person has to read for Pooh Girl.
Yep.
Because it is so hard to place. It takes that touch. You get Inspector. You look like
yes.
you might have a rod glued to your back.
Yes. I remember the first time I met Anita, and I don't know if you remember this, but we worked the Girl Scout event that year.
Yeah.
And I remember being like, I see this woman walk around all of the time in the park, and she's like, and in between Girl Scout groups that came to meet us, we would introduce ourselves. They would leave, and she'd go, yeah. And it was like, I'm gonna sit down for a second.
Yeah, we just go take a minute.
Just take a minute.
Wow.
Like, it was very prim and proper.
Militaristic. Well, they put me, so at first I did expect to play a male. They actually, that top, which I love. Thank you, Cher and Michelle, for making that wonderful top out of Goodwill curtains. It was amazing.
It was really cool.
I kind of expected to play a male, and then I got my costume, and I started seeing this character a little bit more. I thought, oh, okay, so that's fun, and I feel like with a woman you can play a little bit more humor, but also thought this is a character. She's in Scotland Yard in the middle of, probably the first female. Like, she got have a little chip on her shoulder. And her whole shtick was she didn't believe in Jack the Ripper.
Oh.
Which is, everything, all this is going on. She's like, don't listen to those people. There's nothing. Stop telling me fairy stories, because they would come in and like, it's Jack the Ripper. I'm like, I'm going to need a ghost story. Yeah.
I'm not here for ghost stories. Go to Mass Acres for ghost stories.
I also, so like every other female in London, was a harlot at the time. We had a bartender. We had the bar owner, and then everybody else was a harlot. And Scarowinds does not have soft ground, y'all. It's like, it's brick or it's asphalt.
I always say Scarowinds is where shoes go to die.
They do. They do go to die there.
Yes. And in between my first 2 years, so first season, my shoes wore out, and then they stopped making that kind of shoe. I was very sad. But I would kneel. I would go, like, I had space, and I used it. It's your room. They are in your space. It was all you. So I would back up to the far corner and then lunge forward, and I got bruises all over my knees. So I started putting on knee pads. Do not let a town full of harlots find out that you're in a small room with knee pads
on. Oh my goodness, I can't imagine the jokes. We're gonna hear some more stories from Anita and the time you spent in London. For the sake of time, let's jump into the next skeleton key. So those of you who know Scarowinds know there's a clown something always. 2015 there was a clown maze. 2016 it transitioned over to Psycho Circus. I think 2016 it was the Psycho Circus. It changed names multiple times. Psycho Circus, Carnival. It kind of bounced between the two of them. But their skeleton key was always the same, and it was always, I always heard guests complaining about this skeleton key because it was a curtain maze with one monster that they wrote. There was no like assigned skeleton key. Like you did not audition for the clown skeleton key. It was, hey, who wants to go work the skeleton key for an hour? Like the supervisors would walk around and be like, you want to go in the skeleton key? Because I had friends that worked in those zones, and they were like, I hate working. It was called Jack's Revenge. And there was usually a blackout there that would sit there and be like, your skeleton key, click, have fun, hope you don't get lost. And it was just curtains that you would walk through. And people would get lost all the time, and they would end up going out.
Hey.
That's very mean.
Quiet on the set.
But you would go into this curtain maze, and it was just, you flipped through curtains, and people would end up accidentally going out the side door. and wouldn't finish the skeleton key because there was no, 9 times out of 10, the years that I heard, there wasn't really a lot of people working it.
I will say I did have the best time though in Jack's Revenge in 2017. I had come through with my dad, my sister, and brother-in-law, and we got there and it was like 12:01. It was the very last thing. I said, I'm sorry, but
can I please do it?
Can we please? Like, y'all know me, I will bring you brownies. Can we please? They piled all of last night.
Gosh.
Every single clown at 12:01 into the skeleton key.
God.
It
Yes.
was beautiful.
That, and I've
Like,
heard,
thank you all.
I have heard that they tended to do that towards the end of the night, and those were the best groups that got
That
to
was
go
the
through.
best.
But the rest of the night, I remember one Monster Beck who used to work there. He was in the skeleton key pretty frequently.
I remember.
And one time I walked through it, he got me good because they like hide in the corners and you can't see them through all of these curtains. So if there was a monster in there, it was a pretty decent experience. But in the 4 years that it was there, people were not a huge fan of Jack's Revenge. And there wasn't really a story. It was you go in, find your way out.
It had the giant Jack-in-the-Box on the top of it, which was actually once a working animatronic. They used to have, back when Last Laugh was the main area there, and it was this big Jack-in-the-Box, and he would sit there, you would hear the little melody, and then suddenly, when he gets to the end, he jumps up, and heavy metal music plays with a strobe light. It's so cool. And I guess they just didn't have the parts to fix them anymore, so they decided to use them as a design. So fun fact. And he's still around. I saw him at the Harley Quinn Club.
Yep.
So he's still alive.
He jumps up. He goes ding, and then he.
Oh, he actually does move now?
He moves now. But
But it's not the.
Those are the skeleton keys that I can remember off the top of my head. I realize now Anita went very in depth about her experience.
Sorry.
No, I did not get a chance to share.
Let's get a taste of Pooh Girl.
Let's get a taste of Pooh Girl.
Pooh Girl.
So, Playground was an interesting skeleton key. In 2014, 2015, the story was the child had been exiled. The overarching story of Playground was that this playground was built on top of some sort of toxic waste land, and it made all of the children mutants, or they had some weird quirk about them. Well,
Usually homicidal.
Usually homicidal, lots of murderous children. But Pooh Boy, I say Pooh Boy because in 2014, 2015 it was a male that it was played by. Pooh Boy had a taste for his own fecal matter. And I don't know a lot about the actual story, the actual script, but I do know that 2014 there was 2. There was Pooh Boy and Booger Boy. I think he went by Booger Boy. Booger something to do with boogers. He ate his boogers. I don't know that he was technically a part of the skeleton key.
Anyway, on the 2 guys.
Booger Boy.
Booger Boy. I'm pretty sure that was Wedgie Boy.
Wedgie Boy.
It was Wedgie Boy because he
knew it was
had the
something
underwear
boy.
over his head.
That's what it was. Not Booger Boy, Wedgie Boy.
Wedgie Boy. Yeah.
So, as far as I knew, at least the year that Clam was in there, it was Pooh Boy and Wedgie Boy, and they were brothers.
Yeah, you have a little bit of taste. Go ahead in there. Yeah, okay. You taste a little avocado I had last night. That's cilantro. Cilantro, yeah, it's cilantro. It's a corn. You know what they say about corn, right? That's for you? No, it's the gift that keeps on doing it. Oh! Yeah.
They were in this shed. They had been exiled from their parents, and they didn't have food. They brought the guests in. Again, I don't know a lot about the script, the storyline, but at the end of it, there was a little child's toilet in the corner, and the Pooh Boy would go over, and he would reach his hand into the toilet and pull out what looked like fecal matter, and they would eat it, and they would scare the guests out. In 2015, it was the same storyline, but I think it had swiveled to where instead of eating it out of the toilet, the actor wore an adult diaper, and I think he put chocolate or whatever he was eating in the adult diaper, and he would reach into the diaper, pull it out of the diaper, and eat it. And it would scare the people out. When I began in 2016, I was a second-year monster. I came into my audition, and they handed me the Pooh Girl script, which I love that piece of information that every single person reads for Pooh Girl.
Every single person, because it's so hard to
It's
cast.
so hard. So I remember looking over the scripts, and they're like, take your time, read it. And I was like, good thing I'm a cat person. Mm-hmm. So starting in 2016, the storyline of Playground shifted. They were still built on top of a radioactive dumpster of some sort, and all of the children were mutated or homicidal. Pooh Girl had been exiled from her parents' home because her cat had passed away, and her parents believed that she had intentionally killed her cat. So her parents were like, we don't want this homicidal child in our house. They sent her away, and she ended up taking up housing in a shed. So Kibbles, the beautiful little Kibbles, fell into the garbage disposal. He, poor little thing, just jumped on the counter and didn't see him there and just flipped on the garbage disposal and
Kibbles and Bits.
Kibbles and Bits. Kibbles turned into Bits.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
that's in the script.
So Pooh Girl was so devastated at the death of this cat that she had her carcass, her cat carcass, and she was mourning the death of Kibbles. And the guests who were coming in were her only friends that showed up to his funeral. She invited all of her friends from the playground to come to Kibbles' funeral, but none of them wanted to come. So Pooh Girl was very sentimental. She had Kibbles' carcass that she carried around, that she kept in the room with her. And once everybody came in and they picked a dot, she went through the ceremony. She talked about Kibbles and how wonderful he was and how he was the nicest cat and he was great, and now he's living in the big cat tree in the sky. Talked about how he died. Kibbles fell into the garbage disposal. That's where they get the name Kibbles and Bits from. And then Pooh Girl begins to share how she mourns the death of dear Kibbles. One of them, she has this bag that was vegetable soup. They put vegetable soup in a Ziploc bag. Originally, vegetable soup in a Ziploc bag. And she would hold it up and be like, this is one of my prized possessions, Kibbles' vomit. And she would go around, and I, myself, when I was I would make each of the guests squeeze it. Like, we were not allowed to continue the story until every single person paid their respects to Kibbles by squeezing this bag of vomit. Now, mind you, some of these weekends, they would not switch out the soup. So it would sit in the hot, because it's hot in North Carolina in October and September, still like 80, 90 degrees, and it would like stew. So it would I would walk in on Friday afternoon and be like, I need more soup because it smells like death in here. And they were like, it's fine, we'll get it to you later tonight. Some weekends that was real ripe, expired soup in a bag that I was putting in people's faces for them to touch. But anyway, they would squeeze it. Sometimes, one of my favorite stories, if I was feeling real ballsy, if I read the group and I was like, this is a playful group. I love this group. They're going to have a lot of fun with this. I can push the line a little bit here, as you and TJ would say. I like to push the boundaries a little bit. If they refused to squeeze it, I would hold it up and I would smack their faces with it. And Kelly and Monica happened to be in the skeleton key when I did that. And this was my second year, so I knew who Kelly and Monica were, but I wasn't like aware that I shouldn't push the boundaries when they were there.
You always push the boundaries when the yellow shirts come in.
Yes.
They need to know what they're paying for.
Exactly. So I was like, oh, yellow shirt, I'm going to give this my all. And this man, I was like, you have to touch it. You have to touch it. You're being very disrespectful. This is Kibble's funeral. And he was like, no. So I picked it up and I smacked him in the face with it, and I went on to the next person. They left. And Kelly came back and she was like, Brittany, do you know that the man you just smacked in the face with expired vegetable soup is the CEO of Cedar Fair? And I was like,
was he in a purple shirt?
Yes.
Okay, it's okay. I said things to that man.
And she was like, I almost started sobbing. And I was like, mind you, I have like Vaseline spray painted brown on my face. So there's like poop all over me. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. Before I can even finish, she goes, that was the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life. Just be careful. Don't do that to every guest. That was awesome. And then went about her business. And I was like, I could have lost my job.
I critiqued his drawing in the lemon.
Yes.
So
that man has seen some
that
things.
man's- he needs to know what he's paying for.
Exactly. You got to know you got the good talent in your skeleton keys. So after we would say our piece to Kibble's vomit, Pooh Girl would go on this long spiel about how, she misses him so much, and the only way that she can keep Kibble's memory alive is to share her favorite snack. You go over to the corner, she pulls out a litter box, bangs it on the table, and she goes, "This is the only way for me to remember Kibbles and his legacy." And she would pick up a piece of cat poop and she would eat it. And eat it in front of the guests and then offer it to the guests. And when the guests would refuse, she would promptly kick them out of her house. I have made multiple people run out of that room and vomit down the gate, right by Flying Ace Aerial Chase, Reptar, whatever it's called now. My favorite was a woman who it was a rather long piece, so I bit it instead of putting the whole thing in my mouth, because by the end of the season I had a cup where I would spit out the Tootsie Rolls.
To you for not having a spit bucket like right there.
I should have, because by like the second to last weekend I was like, I need a cup, because I cannot eat this many Tootsie Rolls in one night. Like the weight of eating so many Tootsie Rolls in one night, I was like, no, I had to have a spit cup. So this was when I was still eating the full poop. So it was a rather long piece, and sometimes they would mold them to look like poop. Sometimes I had to do it myself. I would like unwrap them between guests and like mold them and put them, because the cat litter was oatmeal, and I hate oatmeal. I don't like oatmeal. I don't like dry oatmeal.
Eating poo, fine, but oatmeal.
Eating poo is great. I draw the line at oatmeal. And so I picked it up, and it had like oatmeal oats on it, and I bit into it, and this woman goes, when I hear her go, ooh, and the person she's with is like, oh my God, and she goes, back in her mouth. No. And then he looks at her, and she goes, runs out, and all I hear is her retching. And I was like,
protein spill.
Well, I'm not going to ask her to eat the poop, because clearly she doesn't like it, but all of you can eat it. And they were like, all of them ran. They were like, no.
Damn.
There's been vomit on my floor. They would like just puke. Like sometimes I would just pull it out and people would leave, and I was like, you're missing the main event. Where are you going?
Wow.
So I think that's why it took a special person to be able to.
It really
Absolutely.
takes that touch.
It was one of the most difficult characters I've ever played. She was very fun. The script was very well written for a Skeleton Key interactive experience, but eating 70 Tootsie Rolls in one night was not the vibes. Sometimes when I did have the spit cup, I would just pull out my spit cup and be like, this was when it was really loose. Do you want to try this one? And I would show them like all of the Tootsie Rolls that I had like spit out of my mouth.
One Tootsie Roll is one too many.
So Pooh Girl was an experience, and absolutely one of my the most fun I've ever had, because you really could create this fun character while staying within a script.
I will say, I think that has been the most challenging job that I've ever done. Every single other job I've had, I've compared it to like, is this as strenuous as a Skeleton Key? And nothing has come. Because you also can't see.
Nope.
Like when we're in those rooms, and shout out, thank you, Steve, by the way. One night, Steve sat down, he's like, you know why you don't have a roof, don't you? I'm like, do I want to know why I don't have a roof, Steve? It's like, because if there's a roof, it's a room, and they have to inspect it. If there's no roof, it's not a room. It doesn't follow building code.
Yep, mine didn't have a roof either. That makes so much sense.
So thank you.
Wow.
And London, of course, is full of fog. So on nights I would watch it crawl.
Volcano.
It would start spilling in. It was
Yes.
And guests love to tell you don't have a roof, don't they?
Yeah. They were like,
you don't have a roof. I'm
be like, you live in here? Be like, yeah. Why do you think it's so gross?
Yeah. What do you want in Whitechapel? We got no money.
Right. I'm a child. How do I afford to put a roof on top of my shed?
Yeah, it's Jack the Ripper, not Jack the Roofer.
I wish I had known that. I used that.
That's good.
But you can't see
No.
outside those walls. So at any given point, we have no idea how many groups we have to do.
Jeez.
So you're there, you may have one left, you may have 100 left. And if you are in line, at Carowinds, if you are in line before midnight, you will go through that event.
Yeah.
And they've all paid upwards of $60 to be there for 5 minutes of your time. So it was literally, you had to be there 110% every single time.
Yeah.
You have no idea when your rest breaks are coming.
There were nights where I would go one group after another until closing, and then there were nights where I would have
And you were
one or
first
two
in,
guests.
last out.
Yep, first in, last out.
Last out.
And it also, I had some negative experience in my time. My blackout was not the best. And there was a very intoxicated group of people that were outside, and I would come and I would knock on the door, and that's how he knew to send in more people. Once the group was out, I could take a sip of water, and I walked right back to the other side to let the next group in. And I had knocked on the door, and they opened the door, and I could just smell, like the alcohol hit me. So I was close enough to slam the door shut before they could come inside, and I yelled, "Oh, hold on, just 1 second. Kibble's not quite ready yet." Because I was trying to stay in character, but I could tell, and I could hear them, like, screaming and yelling at each other before they even came into my room. So I was like, I don't want this group to come in. So I went to leave. The blackout let them in. I ended up getting cornered. I ended up getting pushed into a corner. Some inappropriate things happened. It was not a great experience. So being in a skeleton key didn't always mean you were safe. I remember zones getting pulled. I remember Scary Tales being pulled one night, and I had to stay in my box.
They just locked you in.
They locked you in there.
What?
Yes.
Which, on the one hand, you're probably the safest that you can be. On the other hand, you're alone, and you're just
like hearing all of the people.
Oh.
And it was, so that was one downside of being in the skeleton keys, but I still would do a skeleton key again.
Oh yeah,
absolutely. When I had good blackouts, because I eventually switched that blackout out when I was Pooh Girl, and the new blackout I had was fantastic. He was very wonderful. We were able to work out a system where I would poke my head out and be like, how many friends did I have show up to this funeral? And I could see, like, where Playground is, it was on that bridge, and I could see the line, like, wrapping around towards the candy store, and I was like, let's bring 20 friends into my box tonight. And sometimes you had 20 people. Sometimes you had one. I did the show for one person several times. Yeesh. Because people come to amusement parks by themselves.
Yeah.
They came and you gave them that same show. It was a quicker show.
Was to see repeaters.
Yes, they would come back with friends and they'd be like, oh my God, you're going to hate this one. And I'd be like, why would you say that? This is a great experience. I will say one of the challenges with me when I was Pooh Girl was it had been males 2 years prior. So I would be in my box and I would hear people walk by and be like, oh yeah, there's a dude in a diaper in there. Like, you should totally go see that. And I would just come barreling out like, did you just call me a boy? And they're like, I guess it's a girl this year. And like would just keep going. And I think having that character as a female was better. Because boys are gross. No offense, Leroy. Boys are gross.
They are gross.
Girls are not stereotypically grosser than boys. So I feel like it freaked out a lot more people because they're like, this girl is not going to eat cat poop out of a litter box. She's eating cat poop out of a litter box. I gotta go. This is disturbing.
Nobody expects like a 5'4" chick to get gross on them.
Exactly.
They think they're going to be high and like...
Hi! Yeah. And like my voice was very high pitched. It was very... I'm a little child. I'm 6 years old. I ate my cat's poop to remember him because he's dead. And it's just wonderful. Now, did you do any other skeleton keys? You just did London.
I just did London. 2017, they introduced the Talent Team program, which hopefully will be a future episode. 2017, they did the same story, and that was the year they started having 2 actors alternating. So that was a thing. I will say, as far as safety goes, to jump back one, I was fortunate in that the London key had 3 doors.
Oh, very nice.
They came in here, they exited here, and I had a door back here because that's where Jack the Ripper used to come in. And I had wonderful area managers, and we spoke first night and said if there's ever, because Monica and maintenance had a wonderful back and forth going all season because I was in a bar. I had cups back here. There was a table set up with like pewter dishes, some bread that was real bread dipped in wax that just absorbed water and grew all season. maintenance didn't want to nail stuff down because then that makes it harder to deconstruct and store. Monica wanted it nailed down because, as she said, you could knock her out with this.
Yeah.
I had the wonderful Angel and Alicia that
year,
and I said, like, I'm playing an authority figure. I will use my outdoor voice to make them act right, but if they ever do not, I'm going out this back door and I will meet you.
Yep.
So that was a good safety valve.
That the year that I was in Scary Tales, the year that I was the Riddle Master in 2017, it had one door in, one door out, and it was terrifying, and it was a very small room. Like, the room was probably about as deep as, like, where the camera setup is, and there was just a table with the jelly beans, and the people would stand right here. So you could only fit, like, maybe 7 people at most in that room, and they had to go out where everybody was lined up to come in. So obviously I'd be like, what happened in here? Like, you don't speak about it as you leave. Like, everything is confidential. And they would, like, be out and be like, oh, what jelly bean did you get? So the people coming in were like, jelly beans? And I'm like, you idiot! Stop it.
Cannot follow directions.
Cannot follow directions. And 2017 was the year we had rotating managers. So every night we had a different manager. And on the last night of that season was the night that it was insatiably cold. So all of the zones got pulled except for the skeleton keys. So it was me and Alicia. I was in this, like, vampire cape, and me and Alicia were just in the corner of the hut that the Riddle Master was in, and we were like, is anybody else? Because they took our blackout too. They're like, blackout, go help at the maze.
Oh my God.
So it was me and Alicia, like, in the hut, and we were like, open the doors, anybody out there? And we're like, nope, okay, stay in here.
I remember
managers
that.
also got left out. They had us, like, emptying the trash
Yep.
cans down at Monster Central.
Dang.
Almost lost some toes that night.
Yep.
I can't believe they kept y'all out. I remember that night.
You can't? I'm sorry.
I mean, dang. I got put in zombie high that night.
Because, like, clowns were in Slaughterhouse, and, like...
But, I mean, I understand why they kept you there, because people paid for that.
Yeah.
But at the same time...
And it was also, like, they got pulled at, like, 10:30, 11. Like, it was 32 degrees. Like, it was freezing.
Oh,
they
yeah.
pulled everybody. And,
even Scare Force, that's why I was put somewhere.
and that was the year my costume was, like, this pilgrim dress. It was very low cut, because they would do a design on my chest of some sort. I was very cold. And it was short sleeve. It was very cold. And they were like, here's a cape. That's what we have to keep you warm. And I was like...
Did Harold not keep you warm?
Harold did not. My 7th ex-husband, Harold the animatronic. If you go to Scarowinds now, the guy that gets up and farts on people. Harold and I and the Riddle Master were married. But it's very interesting to see the different evolutions of the skeleton keys. They obviously had a very short run at Scarowinds, and I think at Cedar Fair Parks.
I mean, we did as good as most presidents.
We did.
4 years.
4
right?
years.
4 years of Skeleton Keys.
2014 to 2017 were the years that Skeleton Keys were present at Carowinds. And I think Cedar Fair Skeleton Keys only lasted to 2018. I think they went 2014 to 2018. Ours only lasted 2014 to 2017.
If I'm not mistaken, I mean, I don't think there's barely anything left of the Skeleton Keys, except, I believe... Bloodyard, if I don't know if it's coming back next year or not, but as long they still had the building that it was in, that the vampires referred to as the crack house.
Yep.
Shout out.
The crack house is still there.
But yeah, and I believe a lot of old Bloodyard props were kept in there. There's a lot of good stuff in there. I wish they would pull that out. But yeah, so that's probably one of the only Skeleton Keys you could still see to this day at Scarowinds.
Which brings us to our final segment of this episode. If we were to bring Skeleton Keys back, how would we incorporate them into the park now? Me, I think about this a lot because I am a Skeleton Key advocate, and I mention it. Y'all know I still work there. I mention it every year. I'm like, we bring back Skeleton Keys? Where are the Skeleton Keys? And I think our lineup of mazes and zones this past year, it's a lot of the same things that were present when Skeleton Keys were a thing. Bloodyard's still there. We don't have London Terror, but it's Ripper Alley now. It's basically the same exact thing, just a different title. We still have Clowns. We have the Cowboys now, which where the sliders are, Outlaws Revenge. I think there would be, that is a fantastic opportunity for a Skeleton Key in Outlaws Revenge because You have I don't necessarily want to call them harlots, but they're like
Go-go dancers.
go-go dancer ladies.
Saloon girls.
Saloon girls. That's what they
Saloon
call
girls.
them.
Just
Saloon girls.
Put the bar over in Outlaws.
Exactly. And you could, and they're all like dead cowboys. And I think there could be a really great opportunity for a skeleton key there. We have introduced chainsaws in the past couple years, and I don't necessarily think you can't have a chainsaw in a building. Obviously, you can't rip a chainsaw in a building. Keep the roof off of it. You might be able to do it. But I think doing a skeleton key with chainsaws would be interesting.
Tooth Fairy could be weird. You could go full like Steve Martin in Little Shop of
Yeah. I'll
That
be a
would be-
dentist. Yes. I would pay good money for that.
Yeah.
Well,
just,
I would-
just
I don't
put
know.
somebody in the chair.
Yes.
Make them be in the chair. Start the drill noise.
Yeah, that's all you need.
That's
all you
true.
need. If you didn't have
I'm
two
out. I'm
doors,
done.
you would have two doors.
Yep.
Oh gosh.
Leroy mentioned earlier, we should add skeleton keys to the mazes. To that, Leroy, I say, if you went to Carowinds this past year, the closest we could get to a skeleton key within a maze would be the front room of Paranormal Inc. It's a little show, and then you went off throughout the maze. I just think skeleton keys are great.
I would say the biggest thing is they need to respect that they are actually a very difficult job and support that. So you need 2 exits, you need 2 blackouts. You don't have to give us a roof, but you do need to give us a swing and just and not have that actor be expected to be on the street.
Yes.
Because it is exhausting. And I was fortunate. I had a swing for 1 hour Fridays and Saturdays. They let me train a guy. And while he was in there, like, they do get the slightly higher pay rate. They get that extra 50 cents an hour.
Yes.
But yeah, go ahead and look for your good actors. Pay for your adults who can read or who can control a space and a group. Like I said, don't make the respect that it is as hard work as it is. It will come back to you. We had returners. We had people coming back to see the show. So you're going to get that money back if you treat it like the job it is.
Most of the time, it was very strictly you needed to be by the script for a lot of it.
Yes.
But
Would
you also had to make it... Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just saying, like, would you, if you could have a say in how it would be now, would you want it to have more openness to improv or have more options as to what y'all could do in there?
I think, from my experience, Pooh Girl was very scripted. You followed the script. Riddle Master was very, you need to start here and end here. Fill in the middle. I think scripts like that are more effective for the skeleton keys. If you happen to experience any of the skeleton keys at Scarowinds, maybe you recognize Anita and myself, maybe you came and visit us, share your experience down below. Coaster 101 did write a very bad review about my Riddle Master. Because they hated the story. They were like, all they did was tell me riddles. And I was like, understandable, dude. I'm not a huge fan of the story either.
Y'all, I got one last story. I was waiting because being a nerd, I got the call, do you want to audition for Skeleton Key?
Yes.
Like, yes, what's that? Which would be the rest of my Scarowinds career. Of course, what did I just agree to? But being a nerd, I went and researched and I saw the Coaster 101 report from 2015. I'm like, oh, he's going to come through.
Yep.
I want to read my review. Y'all, he came the 1/2 hour all weekend. I was not in there. And but he got the best glowing review. He called my understudy the best actor in the park.
Woo.
So like half of me, 55% of me is like, dang it! But the others is happy for my protege and my friend.
Wow.
Yep. Yeah, Riddle Master did not get a very good review from Coaster 101 that year. And it's not my fault. I gave them good riddles.
Yes.
He got very good riddles.
They missed out on Pooh Girl.
Yeah, they did miss out. Well, my Pooh Girl review was very good.
Oh, good.
I did get a glowing review from Pooh Girl. Which is also another crazy thing about doing those experiences is people write about you on the internet and you're like
shaking.
And then people will come in, like vloggers will come in with their cameras and they're like trying to film the whole experience. And I'm like, Put it away.
And another thing, if you are someone who has a skeleton key at another Cedar Fair park, we would love to hear from you. Maybe even have you on the show. Let us know in the comments down below. Also, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do so. Also hit that bell notification so you don't miss another Haunt Culture. And thank you, Anita, for joining us.
Yes,
thank
it's
you.
a pleasure speaking with you about your experience. Loved hearing your stories.
And it's fun to sit down with somebody else who actually did it, who has the same mental disorder.
Yes, exactly. The same problems.
Yes.
So thanks for watching, guys. We hope to see you next time. And keep it spooky.